It is my honor to introduce Pastor Bryant Lee. He is the founding and senior pastor of Higher Expectations Church in Humble, Texas. He is a well-decorated soldier, having served well both in combat and in times of peace prior to his retirement from the U.S. Army after 23 years of service. Thank you for your service, Pastor Lee. Pastor Lee holds a Bachelor of Bible Studies from Servine Ministries Bible College, a Bachelor of Science in Multidisciplinary Studies from Grantham University, and a Master's of Theology from Liberty University. Additionally, Pastor Lee provides coaching and counsel to local pastors and leaders with Pastor Serve. Pastor Lee has served on a number of boards, including Loving Houston, serving locally and nationally to spread the gospel. Pastor Lee resides in Humble, Texas with his gorgeous wife, Dale Lee, of 30 years. They have two sons, Brian Jr. and Joshua, who is currently serving in the military. They also have two daughters, Brianna and Kaylin, and are proud grandparents to Jason, Josh Jr., and Xavier. Pastor Lee has been my pastor for the last 8 years, soon to be 9 years. So please welcome Pastor Bryant Lee.
Amen. Well, thank you so much. And what an honor it is to be with you today, to be with the Loving Houston family, and to see all of your smiling, warm faces on this afternoon. Because last week we were all looking scattered and a little bit stir crazy. And today we are able to have a little bit more joy behind what we're doing. And the fact that many of us last week this time didn't have electricity or didn't know how long the electricity would be on. Electricity came on, we were rushing to cook and take showers and catch the news. And so the Lord has been gracious to us. I want us to jump in, and I just give you a couple of ground rules. At any time during this presentation, you can stop me, interrupt me, but I have 20 minutes. And so you can ask questions, and I think there's a Q&A at the end. And so I've been tasked to deal with the relief portion of what Loving Houston is doing this year. And I want to talk about relief that is relevant. And so for me, there's often we look at what that looks like on a big scale. So to give you a little background, we've been working with the Humble Independent School District since 2006, actually 2007, since 2007. And we're currently serving in 4 schools because we just picked up our 4th school. And I'll tell you a little bit about how that works out for a church our size. But we initially started with Ross Sterling Middle School or Sterling Middle School. Humble is a very large district, some like 50,000+ students. We have a ton of campuses. We have a great superintendent. We got great support out here. They're very much engaged with Loving Houston. And so that really makes the work that churches and schools get to do together a lot easier. So let me just give you a little bit background on our church school partnership, a little bit background on our church. For those of you who are checking us out on this next slide.
There you go. I just need some cues, Pastor, from you.
Okay.
For when to go slides.
All right. On this next slide, we talk about our church school partnership relief that's relevant. Well, here's the first thing that I want you guys to understand. The largest our church has ever been, we go back one slide, has ever been is a church of about 260, 270. Today, we have a membership of about 167. Average age is 35. We're a multi-ethnic church. We have a little bit of everybody at our church. And primarily, we are a working class church, which means we don't have in our congregation doctors and lawyers. We have a lot of well-educated people, but our congregation is made up of people who get up and get it every single day. And then I want to show you the snapshot of the school next, so that you kind of get a picture. So small church. And now when you look here at the school slide, the staff at the school is almost as big as my church, right? 790 student population of 790. It's a Title I school, primarily because the students are economically challenged, right? And so so that makes that allows them to fall into this Title I category. It's a multi-ethnic school, right? And so we've been in that school since 2007, and I'll share with you a little bit about how we got to that place with the school. Now, When we first went into Ross Sterling Middle School, we went in at that time. We probably was a church of about 40, right? If even that. And so we went into the school with no grand plans. We simply went in asking a lot of questions. Now, I had a small advantage. I had been involved in urban inner city ministry. Every place I had been stationed, I had been mentoring in the schools. And we went in not with any program that we had created or the school. There was a program at the time called Lemonade Day. And the principal at that time was like, man, if you can run an after school program that would help us with math. And we thought, how great this would be. So it was a couple of guys, me and another guy. And so we show up at the auditorium where we were having church at until COVID hit. We showed up at the auditorium and we're expecting 20 kids. There were almost 100 kids in the auditorium waiting for us. We were like, oh my God. And so immediately we started to have to figure out how to make this work. We had to go out and find sugar and lemons and pictures. And so we start going to various businesses, asking them to donate so every kid would have an opportunity. Then we had to go and help the kids find a place to do their lemonade stand and teach them all these business principles. Here's the fun part. Many of those students from that first time, right? Some of those students I am still in contact with today. Some are in the military, some in college, some now have their own children. How amazing is that, right? And so when you think about relief that's relevant, on this next slide, you get to see what we're talking about. Go back one more. I'm sorry. You're faster than me. Okay. So relief focuses on meeting the needs of those being served as a mutual agreement by both parties. Now, remember, we started with a free program, Lemonade Day. This here, you see all the teachers holding up Google viewers and phones. Well, through a partnership with our church and a small business, we were able to provide them with 1,000 Google viewers and about almost 200 phones, I think it was. And so how do we get from Lemonade Day to here? Well, this happens when you're in the school and you don't make assumptions, but you ask questions. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we look at the scriptures. We look at our biblical imperative for this. But it's us being detectives, but it's us exegeting, or us going into the school, sitting with the principals, the counselors, the teachers. And check this out, y'all. Sometimes the student body. We've had the privilege of sitting with our student body to ask them, what do you think the school needs? And here's an interesting thing. Often the students will say something totally different than what the teachers and administrators are saying. So why do I hum in on this idea of results of mutual agreement, coming to relief that's mutual agreement? Because churches and church leaders, we're often taking our cues from learned and acquired information, whether that's newspapers, demographic reports, what we hear from our congregation. But that's not how you get to a place of relevant relief that's mutually agreeable. You have to come into the school really with the idea of, I'm here to serve you, not here to impress something up on you. I'm here to find out what are your greatest needs. And so that becomes a real relevant thing. So if we're going to make an impact, we need to find out what it is that they need. There's nothing like giving somebody something that they don't have a need for, right? Because we thought this is what they needed, right? So let's look at this next principle. So we've built out this framework on what we call the L7 framework. The L7 framework allows for both maximizing human and financial assets, right? Because there are two things always at play in church school partnerships. There's the human assets, you need people power, and then there is the financial assets, right? You need some kind of way to fuel what you're doing, right? Because a lot of times when you go into the school, they're going to have felt needs. And you have to figure out how to help them. In schools, a lot of times their hands are tied because of government, bureaucracy, whatnot. There are things that can be done from the outside that can't be done from the inside. Typically in a school, if one middle school gets a computer lab, all the middle schools have to be able to get a computer lab in most districts, right? And that's just how it works. And so, but by the same token, if an outside entity comes in and they're able to provide this skill or this talent or these resources, then it's not necessary that all schools get it. And so understanding the framework of how your school district works, your school works, a little bit about how the government works, really would help us to do that. So let's look at these seven qualities that we want in making relief that's relevant: listening, learning, lamenting, leading, leveraging, lifting, and loving. Right. And we've discovered, and I'm an acrostics guy, and so we've discovered that this kind of framework really helps us move forward. So let's look here at what Nehemiah says. Right. Nehemiah chapter 1:1-4 gives us some biblical principles and imperative. It says, during the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, when I was in the fortress city of Susa, Hannah, one of my brothers, arrived with men from Judah, and I questioned him about Jerusalem and the Jewish remnant that has survived the exile. They said to me, the remnant in the province who survived the exile are in great trouble and disgrace. Jerusalem walls are broken down and its gates have been burned. When I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for a number of days, fasting and praying before the God of heavens. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to ask you a quick question. Brendan, I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide and we're going to come back. Here's my quick question. In the chat box, I need you, when you read and you hear what's going on in Jerusalem, and you think about our modern day outreaches, what could we implement given Jerusalem's condition? Hannah comes back. He gives his report. Just off the top of your mind, what would you believe the needs are, having heard that? Just in the chat box, if you would. Just throw a few of those needs into the chat box. I don't know if I can see the chat box, but I'm just curious to see what do you believe some of the needs would have been if the walls are burnt down, if the walls are torn down. And I'm gonna make an interesting point, right? Need for protection and provision, right? Shelter, okay. Help to rebuild. Tools, good one. Yeah, materials, all right. Protection. And so notice how we all immediately could see what these felt needs were. But if we go back real quick, or we go forward, right? Nehemiah teaches us three principles. First, don't assume we know what's most needed. If you studied scripture, you would discover that from Ezra, Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, God had determined that Jerusalem eventually was going to be a city that didn't need any walls, right? Nehemiah determined, after hearing, that they needed walls for protection, right? But we make these assumptions. If you follow the storyline all the way out, but Nehemiah still gives us good community development. Now, he asks relevant questions of those who were most impacted. His brother had been there, and Nehemiah didn't assume everybody knew the condition of Jerusalem because there had been a war, they had been brought off into Babylon, and so they knew the condition. But Nehemiah didn't make any assumptions. He says, man, tell me the condition. Hannah, what's going on? He's really asking him, what are the greatest needs? And he tells him the walls are torn down. People are fearful, right? But Nehemiah, upon learning this, he doesn't just go out, put together a plan and say, let's send water. Let's send clothes. Get some tools, some brick and mortar. The Bible says that he begins to pray and fast. And when you read that prayer, you can hear prayer, fasting, lamenting, because here's the deal. Why Nehemiah is in the king's castle as an armor bearer, why the children of Israel in Babylon living, and growing their families, and their home is in ruin. In other words, up until this time, with traffic back and forth, nobody had asked the relevant questions. So by listening, by learning, and then lamenting, right? By seeing how we ourselves sometimes turn a blind eye to the condition of our schools, our students, our communities, right? And going back and seeking the face of God. God, what can we do? If we're not broken as leaders, then going into the school is just it's just us fulfilling another checkbox. It's just us doing one more thing. We're just adding something else to our plate. And let me just say this. If we lack passion for it, we should not do it. If we lack passion for it, we should not do it. Our schools are the best indication. The schools near your church gives us the best indication of where our communities are at, right? And so, but Nehemiah goes through these first three steps before he determines what he's going to do, right? So then look here at these next couple of verses. right? He moves from listening, from learning and lamenting to leading and leveraging his influence. Now, remember what I told you. Listen, when we first went into the school, we were a church of 40 people. We had no money, no resources. But the Lord was so gracious and kind that he brought some people with us who had resources. And so we were able to leverage the resources of Lemonade Day as our entryway into the school. Why do you bring that up, Pastor Lee? Because you might not have what you think you need, but you might have the relationships to get the things that you need to the school. And sometimes you may just be the door opener that brings somebody else into the school so that you can make an impact. So we have a saying at our church: no big I's, no small U's, right? That we don't want to have a mentality that if it's going to be, it's up to me. No, it may be that God is just using you to open the door. So look here, he says, then the king asked me, what is your request? He says, so I prayed to God of heavens and answered the king, if it pleases the king, if your servant has found favor with you, send me to Judah into the city where my ancestors are buried so that I may rebuild the wall. So Nehemiah immediately begins to cast vision to those who have the greatest influence, right? We're going to talk a little bit about that. It says, I also said to the king, if it pleases the king, let me have letters written to the governors of the region west of the Euphrates River so that they will grant me safe passage until we reach Judah. And so he is leading this charge. He's taking responsibility. Church school partnerships need a clear person to own it. If you don't remember anything else, remember this: somebody has to own it, right? Somebody has to be committed to it. This is not something where you pass the buck from person to person to person to person. That administration, that team, those students, those teachers, they need to see a face there with passion and with purpose who's going to own, right, what happens in this school as it relates to church school partnership. But then look what he does. He's leveraging his influence, and he's leveraging the resources of the king. When we look at our congregations, there are all kinds of resources within our own congregations and within the network of churches that we're connected to in our community. Then see, regardless of the size of your church, how are we going to leverage the relationships that we have, right, so that we can advance the cause of Christ in the lives of the next generation that more than likely will still be in our community 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? So he leads by taking ownership. Then he leverages, right, his influence for the things that he needs to get it done. Let's move forward real quick. 4 keys to successful relief and church school partnership, right? So I know I got 5 on here, but and the 5th one was a bonus. But let me give you this here. Be clear on your commitment with the school. Be clear on your commitment with the school. Don't overcommit before you get back with your church and see what you can actually do, right? School may say, well, we want to re-landscape all around and all this here, and that might be a $10,000 project. Well, you may be able to say, you know what we can do? We can put a bush right by the front door. Let's not overcommit. But you can get one of those real pretty bushes, and they're going to be super excited about that. All right? Or we're going to start with some seeds, and we're going to come out here and water these seeds until they become full-blown plants. Just don't overcommit, because the students in administration, we don't want to get them up to let them down. Create interest at the church. Come back to the church, right? If you're going to own it, you're going to have to come back and create interest within the congregation. So that it's not a one-man or one-woman bandwagon. Cast vision with the key leaders, church pastors, deacons, elders, auxiliary leaders, so once you guys figure out what it is you want to do, and then catalog the resources needed. When you're sitting with the principal or counselor, listen well. Don't listen to respond, right? Listen to provide relief. Let me say that again. Don't listen to respond. Listen to provide relief. And then champion the partnership on both sides, right? Champion the partnership on both sides. Champion the partnership on both sides. And so those are just a few principles that if we think those through, that's going to help with the relief effort in the schools. All right. Next slide. So we rebuilt the wall until the entire wall was joined together. Catch this one word in here. So we rebuilt the wall. So we rebuilt the wall until the whole wall was joined together, half its height for the people. For the people had a mind to work. Here's what I want to say to you. We want you to help. We want you. The school is looking for a partnership, not a dictatorship. Nobody wants us to hang carrots out in front of them. Well, we can really do this here, but can we get a list of names? We know in our church school partnerships that 98% of those people will never don the doors of our church. You're probably not going to grow your church in a church school partnership. But Matthew 25 tells us that when we see people who are hungry, who are without water, who are thirsty, who are unclothed, that the church has a responsibility to respond, right? And so we want a partnership that lifts people up. And so let me just share this story with you. This past Thanksgiving, we know COVID is going on. We do a box of love deal where we provide a Thanksgiving turkey and all of the trimmings to feed a family of 4. Ross Sterling Middle School, their students, check this out. Their students collected enough canned goods and side items, not only to help us with our 600 boxes, but our church has an emergency food pantry. It stocked our food pantry to get us through the month of December and part of January. Right? So this partnership is not just us going in with the idea, oh, these poor students, these poor teachers. It's also about how can we do this mutual. So relief is a mutual partnership between the church and the school where we are working together, to make this happen, right? That's our goal. That's our goal. We want to work together to make this happen. Then the last principle is loving. The Bible says in Luke 6:31, it says, it essentially paraphrase, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love says, I see you with dove eyes. Love says, right, I work with you with dignity. Love says, I respect you. Love says your voice matters, whether you're a second grade student or you, the district superintendent. Love says I listen well. Love says I learn. Love says I lament, right? Love says I lead. Love says I lift. Love says that I take the position of humility and count this an honor that I get to serve in this her capacity. I think it was a great Mother Teresa on the next slide that says this to us, right? Not all of us can do great things, but all of us can do small things with great love. Not all of us can do great things, but all of us can do small things with great love. So on the next slide, let me just share with you as we wrap up. After the Lemonade Day, one of the things that our church has consistently done is feed kids weekend meals. These weekend meals essentially is what you see there. Every school we went into, our Title I schools, after talking with the principals, all said the same deal. Our kids are coming back to school on Monday hungry. We started with a national organization and we've grown. We've fed as many as 250 kids a weekend, on average, some 600 weekend meals. On average, because we buy in bulk, it costs us about $2.30 a bag, right? We provide these backpacks to kids during right before school starts. We generally have families sign up then, but we're able to provide this her resource. But when we started with the Blessings in the Backpack, we were only feeding 20 kids. Today, we feed hundreds of kids, right? And this here has been the entryway not only into the lives of kids, but into the lives of families, right? And I'm really blessed by this here particular ministry. In fact, one of my most faithful members is a result of us taking the bag, her kids getting the backpack blessings or the backpack buddy bag. And they've been at the church now for about 7 or 8 years. And now she actually runs this program. The young lady who kids initially got bags actually now oversees this program in our church. And so to our schools, we went from bags to this year. This is the previous year at our school. That year we packed 1,500 boxes of love that went out all over North Houston. 600 stayed within our district. 1,500 boxes of love, right? As a community partnership. Because if there's no food on the weekends and kids are going to be out for the whole Thanksgiving week, where's the Thanksgiving meal going to come from? Which got us right to the front door of these families, and we've prayed for many families. In fact, this year there's a single mom with 3 kids who's been at our church now for about 6 weeks as a result of a box of love. As a result of a box of love. So lastly, I'll just remind you, church school partnerships is relief that is relevant. This was a event that me and some of the ladies and staff at the church did, where we got to feed the elementary school one morning right before they had one of their teaching sessions. We worked with we have a from this particular school, there's a Waffle House. They work with us on pricing, and we were able to feed the whole staff. And when I say whole staff, let me be clear, the whole staff: janitors, maintenance people, teachers, counselors, police officers. When we say whole staff, we mean the whole staff, right? Because everybody it takes to raise this village. So with that said, I want to thank you for your time. Pray that this has been helpful. And if there are any questions, I don't know if I'm to take questions now. We do those later, Brittany.
Thank you so much, Pastor Lee. That was so awesome and encouraging. We need to share this with our church also. But I thought this was great. And so, yes, if you guys have any questions for Pastor Lee, this is the time. We have time blocked out for that. So you guys can leave questions in the chat or comments, anything that he can clarify for you. This is your time to speak directly with Pastor Lee. So feel free to unmute yourselves or leave your comment in the chat box. And as I said earlier, I'm a teacher. I was a teacher by profession. I'm a teacher at heart. So I don't mind waiting to allow you guys some time to think of your questions. And then Mel, will you just cue them up for us as they come in to the chat?
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you.
We have a couple of exclamations in the chat for you, Pastor Bryant.
Pastor Lee, can you just discuss like any of the impacts you've had on the staff? I know you talked a lot about the families, but how has the staff responded to you being partnered with them?
I'm one of the only people in the district at my schools. I actually have a staff badge. And so I'm considered the resident chaplain for our school. And seriously, I've had staff who have lost family members, and I'll come to the school to walk the halls, to help them with hall duty. And I'll have a staff member pull me into their area and say, can you pray for me? Can you pray for my family? So I've had those experiences, but I've also been able to help younger staff kind of navigate some decision making, how to work with their bosses, how to work from the middle, understand the school system better. I mean, here's what most people don't know. When a new teacher joins a school or a district for the very first time, brand new teacher, that brand new teacher doesn't get paid on a normal cycle. They actually have to miss, in most cases, the first month of pay. And so a lot of times, teachers want their classrooms to be full and stocked. So we try to adopt in our schools every brand new teacher that's coming in and try to make sure that they're going to have all the tools that they need to start their first day, just like we want the students to have all those tools. And so we're honest that we are Christ-centered, kingdom-minded. We don't hide that from them. I think that does more harm than hurting, more harm than being helpful. I'm sorry. And so it's been a good partnership. And even when teachers have moved on, here's the funny deal. I've had teachers move on to other districts, and they'll call and say, now, how do we get a partnership started at this school? They ain't got nothing. Pastor Lee, I'm like, we can't come way over there. Let me find somebody that can help out and really partner with you. And so it's been that kind of partnership and it's been super, super, super encouraging. I mean, I'll get a text sometime at night from a principal to say, can I give your number to this teacher? And this is what the family is going through. It's just like when Hurricane Harvey flooded our area, we worked in 4 of the teachers' homes with remediation, helping them get their homes back together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, I love how the entryway into the schools with the church school partnerships with the Lemonade Day has opened to such significant relationships. It's not just this transactional, okay, we just dropping things off to y'all, we're just doing these things for you, but it has laid groundwork for so many relationships to be developed over the years.
Yeah. And the thing that I'll share, because we have been faithful with it, we've been faithful. I was invited, like when we got a new superintendent, we did this deal called Portrait of a Graduate. And I was blessed to be a part of the team that came up with those values leading into the future of our district. Right. And I've been blessed to be a part of the district decision-making team. And I think that's just a result of us being faithful. And here again, smaller church, faithfully doing what we can do well consistently over time. Right. When we started a mentorship program and helped with the district-wide mentorship program, we just helped build the framework, but there were others who took that framework and built it out and ran with it. Right. And so I think those things are like super, super important for you guys who are district coordinators, just encouraging churches to start the Shamgar principle. You start where you are, use what you have, right? And expect God to bless the results. You know, sometimes a church school partnership can be adopting one classroom. And we're going to come in here, we're going to paint the classroom, right? Just it could be just one little deal consistently done. We're going to come once a month, right? And we're going to work with this one classroom. That has huge implications. So we hear the word church school partnership, but often when you start this relationship of relief, you're not really starting with the entire school. You're starting with something where you can have, where you and the principal or administrators or students have decided this is where we can have the greatest impact.